Well, hello, Beady friends. Welcome to another Beadalon class for the Michaels Community Classroom. I love on our lives watching the names of old friends and new friends scrolling by as you join us for class. It is so wonderful to have everybody here. Now, the title of our class today is 5 Secrets to Making Stretch Bracelets. Those of you who know me know that I'm not going to stick to 5 secrets. I have so many tips, so many tricks, so many nuggets of knowledge and, dare I say, wisdom that I have collected over the years. And I would love if anybody else has a good tip or trick, go ahead and put that over in the chat, which is a good place for me to mention that I am very happy to see so many people saying hello from near and far over in the chat. If you have any specific questions, go ahead and put them in. I try very hard to watch the chat as I am going along. If there's a question that's a really important, a really good one, oftentimes actually someone will answer it before I can even get to it. But if I miss it, go ahead and put that in the chat again. Yvette from Beadalon is also here. She will be posting links, posting instructions, keeping me in check, making sure I don't forget anything. So right out of the gate, what I always love to know when class is getting started and we're still waiting for everybody to come on in is this your first class with me? We have a lot of people signed up today, which is wonderful. And I know a lot of old friends are here, but is there anybody brand new that I need to welcome? I will do that right now. Welcome to class. The other thing that I would love to know is what are your biggest challenges to making stretch bracelets? I know the big ones, the knot breaks, the elastic cord breaks, things are fiddly. I don't know, they're kind of the traditional ones. How do I get my knot to stay? All of these, of course, we're going to be addressing, of course, in our 5 secrets class today. But if there's anything specific that you've been challenged with that maybe I haven't even thought of, definitely go ahead and put those in the comments, and hopefully I will get. I have a lot to talk about, and some of the things that are coming through are definitely things I'm going to touch on, but a couple of other ones that are really good are coming through as well. If you are joining us on the replay, you know that 24 to 48 hours after class is over, Michaels posts all of these amazing resources over in the Michaels Community Classroom section of their YouTube channel. So amazing, you can skip over all the chit chat, get right to the meat of all of the things that I'm going to tell you about making elastic cords or stretch bracelets today. Perfect, great things coming through. I really appreciate it. Friends old and new, they always know when how to get me to smile and laugh when I am reading the comments as I'm going along. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and flip that camera and start talking about what we need for our class today. And in case I didn't mention it at the very beginning, my name is Meredith, and I work for a company called Beadalon. Also, Artistic Wire is one of our big brands. We do a lot of classes for the Michaels Community Classroom and a lot over on the Beadalon website and Facebook page as well. So at the very basic beginning of everything, all you are going to need to make a stretch bracelet are, well, 2, and let's go with 3 things. We'll say 3 things. The first thing you're going to need is some stretch cord. Now, this is the Beadalon brand of stretch cord. It's called Elasticity. It is a very strong, very stretchy, very resilient cord. It is available on the Michaels website. This particular brand, Elasticity, is not available currently in Michaels stores, but everything that I say, all of these secrets, all of these tips and tricks will apply for any brand of stretch cord that you have in your stash. So if it's a Michaels brand, if it's a different company, same thing will apply. And some of these are not sure where I was going with that sentence. You can tell when I'm reading the comments and thinking at the same time. So elasticity is primarily what I'm going to be talking about today. Beadalon has another brand, and that brand is Elonga. And I want to take a moment, please indulge me. I want to talk about the difference between these two materials, because you will find this type of multi-strand elastic cord under both the Beadalon name. This is available on the Michaels website, but under different brand names as well. So it's tough for me to talk about different brands specifically. So what I will do is I will generally talk about the two different categories of stretch cord. So the one category, elasticity, is a single cord. Okay, and I'm using the gold so maybe we can see it a little bit better. Well, I'm always playing around with my backgrounds. I tried a white background today instead of the blue to see if maybe we can see things a little bit better. I might switch it out. We'll see how it goes. This is one strand, and this happens to be a 0.8 millimeter diameter. We're going to get to diameter in just a moment. On our package, we talk about the recommended knot. We're going to talk about that in class in a couple minutes as well. But this is one cord. So there's no filaments here. It's not stranded. It's it's a mono cord. We're going to get real specific. The Elonga, on the other hand, is, as I mentioned before, a multi-strand cord. So what does that mean? I'm going to try to carefully cut this open. I tend to really manhandle my my packaging, so I try to pretend like I don't do that when I'm on live. And you can see here, I'm going to snip this and I'm going to stretch it at the end, and you can see someone's not behaving, not coming apart for me, which is actually a good thing. But if it were going to come apart for me, you would see that these are a whole bunch of different fibers. So the advantage to using the Elonga, one of the advantages, is if the inside of your beads are rough, and that does happen, they can cut the insides of they can cut your stringing material. The insides of the beads can cut your stringing material, and this will start to fray. And that's actually a good thing. It's an early warning system that the material is going to eventually get cut through and break. Now, you might say to yourself, well, I don't want my material to cut through and break. Well, this is stretch material. This is not bead stringing wire, right? The bead stringing wire that we talk about, that we use in other classes when we do our crimping. This is elastic cord. And elastic cord, unfortunately, no matter what brand it is, no matter where you get it, whether you buy your bracelet at Nordstrom or you buy it at a discount place. I don't want to knock anyone here. But it's not a permanent solution for jewelry. It's just not. It's stretch cord. It's inexpensive, but it is fantastic for making tons of different designs and using up all kinds of wonderful beads, which is the second part of the equation, right? The first thing that you need is the elasticity. Second thing, all you need is beads, right? We all have a ton of beads in our stash. And this is a great way to highlight fancy beads, to use up last bits and pieces of seed beads. And what else did I want to show? Lost my train of thought. Oh, I know where I was going. To use up last little bits and pieces of seed beads. And then the third thing, honestly, the only other thing you need to do this is a pair of scissors. You could use scissors, you could use snippers, just between you and me. Sometimes I cut my elasticity with my cutters. Don't tell anybody though. It's not a good habit to get into, but just something to cut it with. You could use, kitchen scissors, really. It's not that big of a deal. That's all you need. A little elastic cord, some beads, and scissors. Now, if you know me, I'm going to next level everything here in class. So there are more things that you could use to help make your experience of making stretch bracelets even better. And that's where I like to go. But don't feel like you need these fancy needles. Don't feel like you need to have the fancy stringing glue. But that's where the fun tips and tricks and secrets come in, is ways that you can take a simple technique and start adding layers and layers and layers to make your jewelry making experience even more enjoyable. So no matter what kind of beads you have, if you have sapphires or fancy gemstones, or if you have kids beads that you inherited from a craft box somewhere, anything goes when it comes to stretch bracelets, as far as I'm concerned. So those are the basics, and now we're going to start building. The first and most important thing to talk about when you are talking about any stringing material, really, but today we are talking about elasticity, is, where's my pointing device? It's up here, diameter. So there are 3 diameters of elasticity, and this generally lines up pretty well with all across the board in terms of brand. 0.5 millimeter is really, really thin. Okay, very, very thin. Then we've got 0.8 millimeter, just a little bit thicker. And this, between you and me, this is my go-to. I use 0.8 millimeter more than any other diameter when I'm using stretch bracelets. So if you are just jumping in with both feet, a really good place to start is the 0.8. It's going to be the most versatile and the easiest, in my opinion, to work with. And then, of course, we have 1 millimeter, which is pretty thick. This is good stuff. And I actually have an example strung up for us to play with this. So you can see here, and Olivia in the comments has made a very good question. She says, does it matter what color? That, my friend, is a personal opinion. That is a personal decision, what color you use. And I'm showing some colors here. We also have a satin silver color. And then, of course, they're traditional. Of course, I have a spool tamer on this one. Clear color. So these are the 5 colors that are available on the Michaels website. So we have satin rose gold, satin gold, black, satin silver, and then clear. So a good place to start. Everybody loves to know, like, what if I just want to get one, what should I get? I would recommend 0.8 millimeter in clear. It's going to be your best bet. Now, me, I like to match my colors to my product or to my beads. So one of the examples I have strung up to play around with, I had these really pretty rose gold beads. So of course I'm going to use the pink. Could I have used the clear? Of course I could have used the clear, but I didn't because I like them to match. The black, this 1 millimeter, that's what I used over here on these nice big large hole beads that you can find on the gemstone wall. And again, when I use cool tones like blues and purples and greens, I like to use a cool gray silver color. And then when I use warm tones, yellows, oranges, reds, that's when I use the gold color. That's what I do. I have the luxury of having a lot of things to choose from. And I know that, but I do like to recommend, that's why we have so many different options, because so many different people like things to be so many different colors. All right, so let me set those aside back here, but I'm actually going to bring this back. So why do we have all of the different diameters? Circle back around to that. Whenever you are doing any bead stringing, whether it's with elastic cord, whether it's with bead stringing wire, whether it's with leather or any of the cording from the cording wall. I was actually just in Michael's yesterday and looking through and seeing all of the different wonderful cording that that they offer. The rule of thumb, or the rule, it's not even a rule of thumb, it's a hard and fast rule, is you want to make sure that you fill those bead holes as much as you can. Because of what I mentioned earlier, these beads, and primarily or mostly gemstone beads, when they drill these, they're pretty rough on the insides. And these guys have really, really big holes. And that's by design that I'm using those to demonstrate with today. But those rough holes, those rough inner edges, they abrade, right? And if you're like me, when you have a bracelet on your wrist, you oftentimes play with it, you're kind of fiddling it, it kind of becomes what are those things called? Like a fidget kind of a thing, which is not a great idea, but we can't help ourselves, right? The more you have these bead holes filled up, no matter what you're doing in beading, the better off you are going, the better off your designs are going to be. So one more time, let me say that one more way. You always want to fill those bead holes up as much as you can with your stringing material. And that is why you want to consider, do I want to use a 0.8? Do I want to use of course, now everything is out of order. Do I want to use a 1 millimeter or do I want to use a 0.5 millimeter? And also, there was a very good comment that came through earlier about doubling your thread. And that's actually one of my best, not my best kept secrets, but one of my best revealed secrets is doubling your thread when you're working with elasticity. And we're going to talk about that some more in a little bit. So depending on your hole size, that is going to determine both what your stringing material's diameter is going to be and whether or not you want to double it. Now you can see here, this is a doubled as well. And almost all of my stretch bracelets, I do doubled. That's the habit that I got into. This one I did as a single though, because I couldn't get that this particular stretch cord back through these beads twice. And in teaching different classes and showing different things, I will often do different ways of doing it, because again, we're all different. What works for one person doesn't necessarily work for all of the people. A good question just came through on the chat of whether or not if there's a guide for matching cord size to bead size. Keep in mind, it's not the actual bead size of the beads, it's the size of the holes of the beads. So these are great big honking beads, right? These are, I don't know, 20 millimeters. Yeah, it looks like these are 20 millimeter beads, but they have a pretty small hole, right? I can almost, there we go. Now we can see the hole. That's a pretty small hole. But if you look at these beads, which are much, much smaller, their hole has more than enough room for a doubled strand of 0.1 diameter. So just keep in mind, and we get that question a lot in the Beadalon office. It's not the size of your beads, it's the size of the holes of your beads that you have to be aware of. Okay, so let's see. I think I have talked all about what I want to talk about in terms of getting started and picking our materials. Okay, so we have our beads, we have our strung material. The very first and most important tip that I give, or the most important secret should not be a secret to anyone, is the first thing before you do anything, before you really even think about starting how you're going to string your beads on, you want to pre-stretch your cord. And there's a sweet spot for pre-stretching. You don't want to stretch it so much that you break it. Of course, it has a pretty high break strength, but we're strong women and men. We can probably break this if we really put our minds to it. So you don't want to break it, but you want to stretch it enough that you take out any slack. And that's where a lot of the challenge to stretch bracelets comes into play. Because if you don't pre-stretch your material, it will stretch over time. So if I have a nice bracelet that I have made and I wear this bracelet, let's say I wear it every day, it will eventually start sagging because it's going to stretch itself. It's like if you do any seed bead weaving with NYMO, you have to pre-stretch your NYMO before you do it. Silk, of course, if you're going to do silk knotting, you need to pre-stretch your silk. So too with the elasticity. You just want to give it a nice little stretchy stretch before you get started. Again, we're not doing it so much that it snaps or that it breaks. You feel it give, and then it's ready to go. So that's the number one tip that I have on using elastic cord. And of course, I'm already out of order from the materials that were passed out during class, and I covered over the chat, so I'm a little bit behind. Oh, very good question. And again, I'm glad that Kim brought this up. So I always pre-stretch my Elonga. It's a little bit of a different animal. It's not going to have that give. It has a little bit, in my opinion, a better stretch back or a better bounce back than the Elasticity does. But you know what? It's not going to hurt. So I always do it. I pre-stretch my Elonga. I just give it a little tug. I pre-stretch my Elasticity. Good habit to get into for sure. Okay. I love all the community that has been created here over in the comments. Okay, so the second thing in my top tips work or handout is talking about using thicker sized stretch cords for beads, and we talked about that. Now I'm going to put a little pause on my top tips for a minute, and I want to talk about how we get the beads onto this cord, right? And again, for all of the similar types of stretch cords, I'm not going to mention other brands by name, but if it is a similar type of stretch cord, you want to pre-stretch it. And that goes across the board, whether it's Michael's brand, whether it's another company's brand, you always want to pre-stretch your cord before you get started. And you'll feel it. You'll feel that extra stretch give, and then you'll know that you're ready to go. So I'm using here, this is the 0.8 millimeter. And one of the things that I love about Elasticity and why it's such a great place for people to get started is that you don't need anything but the tip of that stretch cord. And I'm going to actually switch. I'm not going to demonstrate this with the clear because you're not going to be able to see that. So we're going to switch to my favorite color. Can anybody guess what my favorite color is going to be? Yep, satin rose gold. I know that there were some people there. Janice is asking, what size millimeter are the beads? Doesn't matter. I have some 3 millimeter beads down here, and I have some 10 millimeter beads here. These guys are 20 millimeter beads. You can use any size beads that you want. I've got little seed beads here. That's one of my favorite techniques. One of my favorite things to string up on the on a stretch cord is these little seed bead bracelets. They make great gifts, and they're fantastic for stacking. Another little tip, another little extra is I almost always, if I am not let me make sure I'm not speaking out of turn. When I can, let's say that, when I can, I work from the spool. It eliminates waste. See, it's just a habit I get into. I'm just stretching everything out, and I'm feeling that give, and knowing that I'm getting it out now, and that's not going to be a problem down the line. Another really good question, will essential oil break down the stretch cord? Yes, essential oil can damage beads. It can damage cord. It can damage any cord, really. So leather, or you just want to make sure that you don't get the oil on the cord, and you should be okay. Should is a tough one. So if I'm being careful and I am taking my time, I can get these strung up without a needle. I don't have to worry about any extra anything. I don't have to worry about stiffening the end of this. I know sometimes people do that. You don't have to worry about really anything. I can just kind of chit chat and read the comments and go along with this and get everything strung up. No problems at all. Okay. And you just keep going until your bracelet is the size that you want. Right now, I'm stringing my elastic singly. That's where we're going to start. We're going to start with a single a single piece. Yep, not doubled. That's what I'm trying to say, not doubled. So before class, you're welcome. I strung up some bracelets because I know how much everybody loves watching me string things up. But I have just, these are like 3mm little beads that I had left over from another project. I have them, it's on one single strand of the 0.8mm elasticity. And I have I have pre-stretched my elasticity. Oh, and just a little aside, I always like to mention these guys. These are called bead stoppers, and they're a really good way of making sure that your beads don't fall off when you are transporting your beads, when you're sizing them, when you're making sure everything is the way that you want it to be. So a couple of different ways, just as a little aside, on how to size these things. So I like my bracelets pretty tight. Okay. And so my wrist is about, well, after COVID, my wrist is about 6 3/4 inches. And so that's what I measure this at. But remember, when you're measuring something straight down against a ruler, you need to account for the diameter of your beads. This is a little bit of a digression, but it's an important one. You need to account for the diameter of your beads. You are going to need to realize that the space here, and unfortunately they did say that math might be involved sometimes. The space here between the center of the bead and my wrist is on this one much bigger than on these little teeny tiny seed beads, right? So just another one of those things just to keep in mind. But let me show you how I do it. There's nothing scientific. This is how I figure out if my bracelet is going to be the right size. I put it on just kind of like this, and I hold it to see if it's going to hit in a place that I like. Is that the most scientific or most rule-based way of figuring it out? Certainly not. But again, you learn the rules and then you learn what works best for you. There are a ton of tools out there. There are mandrels, there are different sizers that you can figure out. But if you are making these to sell, and Kristen, I'm glad that you asked that question because that's where I was going. My go-to size for making bracelets is 7.5 inches. That's kind of a good middle of the road size. And I always say that wrist size is not necessarily indicative of person size. And it's always a good idea to have different sizes, right? Maybe you make some that are 7.5 inches. Maybe you make some that are 8 inches, some that are 8.5 inches. Depending on who your customers are and who your clientele are, it's good to have different options. But since it's a stretch bracelet, generally it will fit many people, right? And that's what we're going for. We kind of want to find that sweet spot of fitting, so we don't make 1,000 bracelets in every 1/4 inch increment. So on each spool of elasticity, we have a double overhand knot that we recommend to use to finish off your bracelets. I'm going to show you this knot, and I'm going to show you a couple other ones that I like to use as well. But let's start in the very beginning. So I've pre-stretched, I have my beads up, and this is how I tie this knot. I hold my my bracelet in my non-dominant hand. I use my dominant hand, in this case my right hand. I'm kind of giving a little bit of pull here, and you can see how much extra slack I have. One of the things I think that a lot of people tend to do, especially when you're getting started, is not give yourself enough slack. There's a question that came through what the beads are that I'm using. These beads came from this multicolor faceted strand. You can see I used these ones. Actually, this is a couple left. I had 2 of these. There's also a silver and a gold one. And I know that feeling of I need to know what beads they are. So I didn't want to let that go by. And of course, thank you Olivia, for totally getting me off track. So I'm giving a little bit of tension here. I'm just using. And I'm going to come around once. And I'm going to come around twice. So that's double overhanded knot. And so now this is the challenge that a lot of people have. And way back in the very beginning of class, and I didn't forget about you, is somebody had mentioned that their knots are too big. Unfortunately, that can sometimes be the case, okay? Sometimes our knots can be a little bigger than we want them to be. See how big that knot is? That doesn't bother me. If that really bothers you, I'm going to show a way of hiding a knot a little in a moment. Another super extra tip, because I did not add this on the class handout, is when you make your knot, our tendency is we always we pull from the top, right, to straighten things out. But what you also want to do is carefully get in here and also pull from the bottom. So it can be a little bit fiddly to do, but if you pull from both the top and the bottom, then you're going to have a really nice tight knot. Okay. So again, some people really struggle with having these knots show, and I get that. I really do. For me, it doesn't really matter. But for you, if it does, we're going to talk about ways to overcome that. So now a couple things here. And the question that I always get when I do anything with stretch cord is, do you use glue on your knots? My answer to that is I do not use glue on my knots. I make bracelets, I tie them in a knot, I throw them on my wrist, and I call it a day. I've never had a stretch bracelet break on me. I don't know if that's just because I'm lucky, if it's because I tie really good knots, if it's because I've been doing this so long, I do things that I don't even know that I do to make sure that my knots are really nice and tight. But a lot of people do like to use some bead string and glue to seal their knots. E6000, I think, is another good one. You don't want to use a cyanoacrylate glue. Oh, I'm not going to go into a whole sidebar on glues. That's a whole different class for a different day that I have done before. But you want a glue that is going to be stretchy. You don't want a glue that is going to be brittle. Okay, just take that as your takeaway message. And the one that I would use and recommend is the Beadalon bead stringing glue, or this is also known as the GS Hypo cement, same stuff. You would not want to use a bead fix gel. This is a cyanoacrylate, and that is going to be not the right one to do. I'm going to show this knot and a couple different knots and as we're going along. Okay, so you come in here, you snip it off. I don't mind the antenna. That is not something that bothers me, but I know it's something that bothers a lot of people. So let's move on and talk about a couple of ways to account for that. Okay, so let's see. I think I want to talk about this next. So here I had mentioned in the beginning, these really big holes beads. These are on the gemstone wall, and there are a whole bunch of different gemstones, and they're all drilled large holes, and I love them. I love large hole beads because there's so many different things that you can do with them. All I did to create this bracelet, and again, I have my little bead stopper here on the end, is I have it doubled. Okay. I did not use any extra special fancy needle to do this. All I do when I add beads is I loop it over my one finger. I kind of hold it in my hand, and I add, of course, I knotted this off. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to take one off. I'm going to add one bead over both of those. Okay. And this is the 1 millimeter Elonga that I'm using. Bianca, I'm going to talk about the crimp beads in just a second, so not to worry. the second way that I like to recommend tying this knot, if I'm not going to do that double overhand knot like that, and again, this is that, too many spools out, 1 millimeter black elasticity. Okay. This is my favorite technique of how to do this. And this is almost how I do almost all of my stretch bracelets if I'm able. I have 2 antennae over here. I have 1 loop over here. I'm going to thread it through the loop. I'm sorry, I'm going to thread 1 through the loop, not both, just 1. Okay. And then what I need to do, and I have to remember if I pre-stretch this or not, and I always assume that I haven't, so just a little stretchy stretch. And 1 through, and the other is just hanging out over there. Then of course I need to get everything all tightened up. It just takes a minute to make sure everything is tightened up. And depending on how much you have strung those, how much you have filled the holes, that might be a little hard. Sometimes you've overestimated the amount of space or underestimated the amount of space. Okay, so what I have here is I have just 1 going through that little loop. Okay, and all I'm going to do here is I'm going to tie a surgeon's knot. So we've got left over right, right over left 2 times. I said that backwards. We're going to do, I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. Right over left, left over right 2 times. No, I said that right the first time, right? So here's the right. I'm coming over the left and around and through. Okay. And I'm going to tighten that up. And then I'm coming here with the left and I'm going over the right, around once and around twice. And again, if you need to see any of these knots again, the replay will be available in about 24 hours on the Michael's YouTube channel. Okay. And again, these are really large whole beads, but they're gorgeous, right? How can you not get these really cool? I think they're sodalite. Yeah. Sodalite beads, just in case anybody is interested. This is a prototype, so I'm just going to show you the front. They're the sodalite. Sometimes I get some prototypes, but they're on the beading wall. So little tuggy tug in the front, and then I want to just make sure that I come in here and I tug everything up really good so that everything is nice and tight. And once again, my knot is a little bit big. But what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to thread that 1 strand back through so I can pull that knot as much as I can into that bead. It might take a little finagling. It might take a little zhuzhing. I can also do this on the other side. This is actually, it's just kind of coming to me right now as a way of getting that bead nice and hidden in between. And again, it's a little big, right? So if we really want our beads, our bead knots to be 100% hidden, we're going to have to go with an even bigger bead, or instead of using the 1 millimeter, go down to a 0.8, right? So so if that's like you can't even handle that knot there, that's what you would do. You would go down to a smaller diameter of beading of a stretch cord, whether it be Elonga or Elasticity or whatever, and you would pull it into the hole of your bead. A little glue doesn't hurt, right? A little glue before you pull it in, and then you come in here and I'm just going to do a little snippy snip on one side, a little snippy snip on the other side, and call it a day. Really pretty. I tend to make my bracelets when I'm doing demonstrations either too big or too small. I don't quite pay as good enough attention as I possibly should be when I am counting my beads. But that one didn't end up too badly, right? Okay, third thing / like 17th thing. I don't even know where we are right now. Another way to account for that and account for the need to get that knot into the bead is to use a bead reamer. Okay, so this is the Beadalon bead reamer. What bead reamers do is they enlarge existing holes of beads. They don't drill holes of beads. That's a common mistake that people make. They don't drill holes. So I couldn't like come in here and drill an extra hole. But if I need to smooth out these insides, or if I need to make this hole just a little bit bigger to get, I think I have a ghost down here. Something just fell in my workspace. To get that bead hidden, you can use a bead reamer. Again, available online, Beadalon brand. I know that they have some of these in the store as well. Tip for using a bead reamer. You always want to use the bead reamer underwater. Okay, so just a little cup. This is just a little half cup of water, because what ends up happening is you're building up a ton of friction and a ton of heat. So a couple things will happen, not the least of which is that you'll ruin your tool, because the glue here will give. But it's also easier and better to see. I popped out. I wasn't even paying attention. There we go. And these come out, so you can replace them or use actually different types of things in the bead reamer as well. But you always want to do that underwater. Okay. But that's a way that you can open up that hole so that you can hide your bead knot. I keep saying bead and knot interchangeably. You can hide your knot in the bead hole. So even though these holes are so big, you can even make them even bigger, but always, always, always do it under a little bit of water. Okay. So another secret to making really good stretch bracelets is to use something called an elastic cord needle. So what this is a needle with a great big loop on one end and a tiny, delicate hook. And I'm trying very hard. Actually, let me do it like that. There we go. Now we can see the hook. A little teeny tiny hook on the other one, on the other end. And these are available in Michael's stores. Okay. So the way that this guy works, and you can see I was feeling very beachy and mermaidy today. I've got my fish and my mermaid theme. All you do when you are stringing up your design is you use it just like a great big needle, or even as if it were some beading wire. Now the challenge here, right? There's always a challenge to any technique that you use, is your beads, even though many of the Michael's beads have larger holes, which is part of what I love about Michael's beads. Oh, it's not proving my point. Hold on. Someone's got to prove my point. I specifically brought these because I thought they had smaller holes. Some beads will not fit. All right, well, we're making a liar out of me. I've got nothing if not a ton of beads around on my workstation. Let's see if this one fits. Please don't fit. This one's going to fit also. All right, so here, point not proven, but some beads won't fit on your needle and you'll just have to do it a different way. But many, many beads will, obviously, since I can't find one that doesn't, even though I tried to plan ahead for that. But you want to remember that this little guy here, this little end, is less than half of a 1 millimeter needle. This is 1 millimeter thick, that has been bent over on itself and filed down. This is not strong. This is not undelicate. So you want to be real careful with this guy. One of the things that people sometimes can do is pull the end and the tip of this needle out of joint. So I always like to mention that you want to be real careful when you are when you're working with the elastic cord needle, because it will bend if you're not nice and gentle with it. So I'm going to do this one with Elonga, and I like using Elonga with the elastic cord needle because there is a pretty small opening here. It's a tool And like any tool, you just want to be careful and make sure that you are treating it and using the right materials with it. You cannot use a 1 millimeter elasticity with this. You can use a 0.8 millimeter elasticity or a 0.5. But again, it's a great tool. You just have to know its limitations. So I have cut a piece of Elonga. I don't think that I made this long enough, but it'll be good enough for explanation's sake. I have it doubled over and I'm going to hook it. See, this is one of those you can see, I can see, we can both see kind of moments. Hook it gently over that hook right there. Okay. And now again, see, how many times can I say gently during this whole process? Now I'm going to gently transfer my beads from my needle over to my cord. And you can see I'm just kind of holding it here with my fingers, but a better practice would be throwing a little bead stopper here on the end, because then I know my beads aren't going anywhere. That's what this loop over here acts as. Now, as I'm transferring the beads, I want to talk about crimping on elasticity. We do have special longer crimp tubes on in the Beadalon catalog for elasticity. I have used them before without a problem, and they are a great way if you're a strong and confident crimper to finish off your material. The one thing that I will caution, not only about using crimp tubes, but also using crimp covers to hide your knot, is this is a single strand of material. So if this guy gets cut just a little bit, it is going to snap pretty easily. And if you think about the side of a crimp cover, it's a sharp piece of metal. And as it's moving around, it's basically its life, if it's not kind of accounted for, it's just going to cut through that elastic cord and eventually it's going to snap. So are these techniques that you can use? Sure. It will hold a crimp tube or even a crimp bead will hold the elasticity. You just want to make sure that when you're doing it, that you're being really careful about not cutting that material. And I would not recommend those techniques for Elonga. Okay, so I have all of my materials, all of my beads transferred from my elastic cord needle over to my Elonga. And now again, gently, I think that's number 5, I'm going to just slide it off. I slid it on gently, I'm going to slide it off gently. And just like before, I'm going to take my bead stopper off here. I've got my 2 little antennae. One is going through my Elonga. I'm going to tighten everything up. And did I pre-stretch? I don't remember. Let's do it again. There's no reason not to just give it another extra tug before you do the your knot. Okay, and so once again, all I'm going to do is that same surgeon's knot, right over left, tighten it up, left over right once and twice, and tighten that up. And tighten from the top, tighten from the bottom. And this should be a good example of a time that I can slide that knot. Actually, let's slide it into this bead here, into the bead. Okay, so I just gave a little tuggy tug, a little pull. I have no idea if this is the right size or not. And that knot is now in this shell. If I really wanted to give a little extra assurance that that knot was going to stay in that shell, I could just give it just the tiniest little dab of bead stringing glue. I did do the two twists, B. I did right over left and then left over right 2 times, and then I pulled it tight from all sides. So that's a little snug, but I like my bracelets a little snug. So again, you don't always need to use a double strand of elastic cording, but if you struggle with your elastic cord bracelets, if you struggle with making them, with having them be secure, right? Sometimes when we make our bracelets, especially when we're just starting out, our knots can slip, our bracelets can fall apart, and we're not quite sure why. And it can be very frustrating, right? That's why that technique has always worked really well for me, is doubling it. So something to try, right? Little secret, little tip, little trick. Couple more things. We have just a few more minutes left in class. I just wanted to give a couple more of my favorite tips and tricks for using stretch cord. Another thing, if you happen to have, you can't really see, this is what happens when I open packaging when I'm not being careful. These are, I promise, collapsible eye needles. They are available in the Michaels beading aisle. And these are a great one-time use for that doubled technique if you don't have an elastic cord needle. I'm going to show how that works. The challenge, though, is that you will have to sacrifice your needle in order to get it off of the material. There's no way of doing it without sacrificing the needle. But if you have a little piece of wire, like a 24 or a 26 gauge wire, you can make your own collapsible eye needle. And then it's just a little piece of wire that you were going to throw away anyway. And so when you snip it off, it doesn't matter. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go back to this. And actually, even if you don't double it, the collapsible eye needle is a great way just to string up singly, right? So let's do that one first. So we're just going to string this up singly. If you struggle, if you really need a needle with your to string your beads on, there's no reason why you can't just use a nice collapsible eye needle. It's big enough that you don't have any problems, or you shouldn't have too many problems. So let me put it that way. You shouldn't have too many problems getting that elastic cord into the needle. But again, if you're using my technique, what you can end up doing is come down here and then use it doubled. And of course, you can go back through your beads a second time. I don't know. There's certain techniques that people get in the habit of using. And certain things that you're like, oh, this is just not my favorite thing. Like, why do I want to go back through my beads? It's fiddly. They're not going the way that I want them to. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I generally will double string things rather than going back through them a second time. But can you do that? Sure. That's a perfectly legitimate way to do it. So let's see here. I want to make sure I'm just looking at my materials to make sure I talked about all the different things that we talked about. Pre-stretching. We talked about making sure that you use the right size cord for your for the hole size, not the bead size, but the hole size. We talked about different ways to hide the knot in the bead. Either use a bead with a larger hole, or if you really need to, use a bead reamer to enlarge in the hole. We talked about using the elastic cord needle to design and transfer your beads onto your wire. And then we talked about my favorite technique. Well, we talked about the double overhand knot, but then we talked about the other surgeon's knot through the loop. We also went over a couple of extra tips and tricks. I'm just looking around here on my space. I put everything out before class, and then I want to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. So I think actually we made some good stretch bracelets today. And Maria, we're ready to go ahead and take that front facing camera. Wanda, you can't see the knot on my stretch bracelet. I don't know where it is. the seed beads are big enough or the holes are big enough, and I have it done on 0.5 elasticity. So it's just pulled through. That's all you need to do is just pull through one of the beads, and then you can't see your knot anymore. And yes, you do need to ream both sides of the beads to make that hole larger. You ream on one side and you flip it over and you ream the other side, and you actually have to do it a bunch of times. It's not like using a I don't know what a good analogy is, but it takes a little while and it's slow going, but definitely worth it. So thanks guys for hanging out with me today. That was a good one. I really like talking about Elasticord and specifically the Beadalon Elasticity and Elonga. And I think one of the most important takeaway messages is one material does not fit all for all beading. And the more you do it, the more you really get a sense of what the right material is for what you are using in your project, and what beads you're using, what findings you're using. And all of the classes that I teach, all of the classes that Sarah Lovecraft teaches on behalf of Beadalon for the Michaels Community Classroom are all wonderful resources to continue to expand that knowledge and your bead work. In that light, please go back, check out the Michaels Community Classroom on YouTube. Amazing videos all across all media, from painting to paper crafts to fiber arts, and of course all of the classes in the beading category that me and my colleagues have all done for Michaels and me on behalf of Beadalon. If you have posted, or I'm sorry, if you have made something from today's class, please go ahead and post it on your socials. If you do a hashtag of Beadalon, hashtag Make It With Michaels, hashtag Michaels Community Classroom. That's a new one that they're using. And then if you're interested in hanging out with me and seeing more of some of the things that I do, both myself and for Beadalon, you can always follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Meredith Joy Designs. So for everybody who is new, who this is the first class that you took, I hope that this is the beginning of a wonderful beading journey for you. It's so much fun. It can be a little bit of a rabbit hole, but it's an enjoyable rabbit hole. And I have really enjoyed my journey and enjoyed having everybody along with me. So thank you for, again, for everybody for participating and hanging out with me today. We do our classes on Wednesdays, most Wednesdays and some Saturdays. So be sure to head over to the class page on the Michaels site and sign up for all different classes over there. Once again, my name is Meredith Roddy and I am from Beadalon and Artistic Wire. And until next time, happy beading.